So today we're here with Amanda, one of our interns for the summer. She's about to leave us and go back to college, but she worked on some pretty cool stuff here at Meteor, so we wanted to talk about it.
Alright, so I guess I started my internship familiarizing myself with Apollo Client by integrating it into the activities feed on Galaxy. And then I worked on some issues with Apollo Client on GitHub, and then I worked on GraphQL subscriptions, also in Apollo Client.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about working on Galaxy was that it's like a production application. So were there any like challenges specifically around that?
Yeah, definitely working on code that would go into production was really different than just what I worked on before in my class projects. Mm-hmm. First of all, it was just kind of a higher stress environment because instead of just doing this to show to a professor, like a lot of people would be seeing it and a lot of people would be using it. And I also had to write it in such a way that future engineers would be able to understand my code, mm-hmm. which is super important since I'm only going to be here for the summer. And right. Also, Galaxy has like lots of tests to make sure everything actually runs properly when things, like people make changes.
And were there any new technologies that you learned about while you were working on this initial Galaxy project?
Yeah, I guess the main technologies were React, and I definitely learned a lot about NPM during this whole summer.
Nice. So after you worked on Galaxy, you got into working on Apollo Client a little bit, which is kind of like a framework thing that we're working on. So how did you start out with that?
First, I started fixing some issues brought up by the community, and that really helped me just understand the code better. And it was kind of cool gaining that perspective of like all tools we use are actually written by real people and need to be written to accommodate for all their users. And we have a lot of users that are using different tools with the Apollo Client, so we need to kind of adjust our code to fit all of their needs.
Yeah, that's true. I think one of the biggest things for me starting to work at like an open source focused company was realizing that like all the people building these frameworks that we use are like actually real people. It's kind of weird. Yeah, is there anything in particular that stuck out to you as something that was interesting about working on Apollo Client as opposed to projects you've done before?
I guess just bring back to like the difference between working on production code and working on code in class. I think working on Apollo Client definitely made me feel more involved, more inspired and motivated, I guess, because I think like it's cool that when you're working on something, it's something that like an issue that someone filed that's like a legit problem, not something that has been solved already. Not
like some contrived homework thing.
Yeah.
You know, one of your main projects this summer was working on GraphQL subscriptions. So I guess tell me a little bit about how that went for you.
So the first thing I did with GraphQL subscriptions was we first sat down and designed an NPM package that would let a client and server communicate over WebSocket about these GraphQL subscriptions. So we basically just designed a whole messaging protocol from scratch, which was really cool. And then after that, we integrated it with Apollo Client and React Apollo, so it would work on our Apollo Client example app, GitHub.
Right. And have you ever designed like a network protocol or anything like that before?
Not at all. So that was really interesting and new. And I'd also never made something completely from like a blank slate before. Mm-hmm. So that was really useful, just learning how to set up all those things.
Was there anything in particular that you thought was like something that was like the most interesting part of working on that project?
Probably WebSockets. I've never done anything like significant with WebSockets before, so it was just kind of cool to learn how they worked. And like publishing something in NPM, I guess, is exciting. I haven't done that before either.
That's true. Yeah, I'm really excited when we can announce this as like a thing that everyone can use in their apps, because like GraphQL subscriptions, like you saw, it was a thing that you could only really read about in like kind of abstract blog posts. This is going to be one of the first times that people can use it in a real app. So that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
GraphQL subscriptions are pretty cool, and people are pretty excited about them. But what is it that people actually use them for in their apps?
Yeah, so I think the main appeal of GraphQL subscriptions is that they provide like a near live data updating system. So the data will update between different tabs that you have open.
So how does that mechanism work? Like, how is it that when I take an action, on one screen, that it actually ends up updating other people's screens?
So in our system, we have an event-based subscription approach, which is basically a subscription will listen to specific actions taken on the data, such as like submitting new things or updating things. And when those actions occurs, something will rerun that will update the UI so that the tabs will update, even if a change happens in a different location.
Mm-hmm. And how do you actually specify the connection between the action taken and the subscriptions that need to be updated?
That's actually generated all on our packages WebSockets server. When we initialize a server, we give it a trigger generator function that we specify, like, given this subscription, we want to listen to these specific actions, and the server will store that and handle that when those actions occur.
Yeah, and I think a really cool thing about it is that you can get those events from anywhere. Like, if you had a different messaging system that had nothing to do with GraphQL, you could still fire those events and then get the updates and subscriptions, which is pretty cool. So how did you get interested in working at Meteor in the first place?
So I'd actually used Meteor before. I think the first time I was introduced to it was in MIT's web programming competition over IAP, which kind of like teaches us about how to use Meteor, and I ended up developing my app that I submitted to them in Meteor, and then I used it later in some hackathons that I went to.
Oh, cool.
So when I saw Meteor at the career fair, I was like, whoa, I had no idea you were hiring. It's super cool.
We're still hiring. Yeah, that's awesome. And was there any class or anything you did in school that you felt like especially prepared you for the stuff you were working on here?
So definitely that web programming competition. Otherwise, 6170, which is Software Studio, helped me just like learn more about working in a group, like using Git and stuff, and web programming, just like in general, like having like neat code structure. Mm-hmm. And similarly, 005 also helped with that.
Nice. And was working at a company kind of like what you expected, or was there something that was like surprising about it for you?
I think what distinguished this internship from the past summer work I've done and internships at bigger companies was that I felt like I had a lot more responsibility as an intern, which was really exciting, and I felt like my work was more useful and wouldn't be thrown away.
Yeah.
And I also feel like being in like a smaller company setting, people cared more about like how interested I was in things. So like they'd ask a lot for feedback on like what projects I wanted to work on, and that was really great as to have in an internship.
Cool. Yeah. And for me, I was also just like super impressed with all the interns about like how much stuff everyone got done, because it's actually like I'm going to be so sad when the interns leave because we're going to basically have fewer engineers in the company. So thanks for getting all this stuff done.
Thank you.